I love the first movie so much. It's a movie that was part of my cinematic education. I was like raised with Blade Runner. It's a movie that was by far one of my favorite movies of all time. So I said, I don't want someone else to fuck this up. I mean, I need to. Even it's like a suicidal mission, you know. It's like super risky. Everybody will hate me. I can be banned from the cinematic community from the rest of my life, but it's worth the risk. Artistically, it's such a big challenge, but such a beautiful one. It's crazy idea to do that. Maybe a very bad idea, but I was mesmerized by the story of the screenplay, and I said yes.
Obviously, prepping, I used a lot of wigs to prep. Denis doesn't like wigs, so to speak. Not many directors do. And what was sort of interesting, one of the first looks we did was as Ana de Armas as the pink girl once. She was one of the first looks we were doing, and we're discussing what color hair she should have. Obviously, she was going to have pink skin. We didn't know at that point what color pink, but I was working on a stock shop bought wig that we were coloring in the hair and makeup department, and it's sort of like putting different tones and different shades and things. And basically, that's what actually we finished up using on camera, because by the time we didn't really have enough time, because we shot a lot of those things in prep. So by the time it had been decided, yes, this is the skin color, this is where we're going to go with hair, we didn't have time to have anything made. That was it, basically. And that was sort of like something I got off the shelf in a store somewhere. But we coloured. It was a blonde one, and we coloured because we wanted to not look like shop bought, obviously, wig, but it was sort of like we wanted a multi-toned and sort of and purple with pink highlights in and things like this.
The spinners, which one of the items we reprise from the first film, the hovercraft that Deckard flies in, those are made from bull roarers. You know, this cat o' nine tails that indigenous people spin above their heads. So a lot of the work that I do when I'm designing is creating these free associations. And so I look for kind of visual metaphor to find the sonic metaphor. So Theo Green and I, who was my co-sound designer, we started looking for textures. We wanted this kind of buzzing, spinning sound, because they were called spinners. So I'm working with something I was already given. And we had some recordings of indigenous peoples doing this. All we had was that simple recording. We then had to manipulate that and turn it into what sounded like the engine of a futuristic spaceship. So you have to create sounds of it taking off, landing, flying by, inside the cockpit, steady state driving, all from one sort of little bit of audio.
Well, tell her what you did with those rumbles and the rattling and all that, how you can. It's really cool.
Denis wanted to impart this idea that the spinners, because we're post-blackout, this is a little bit of story business, there's no more manufacturing, there's no more spare parts for anything, so everything's in a bit of disrepair. So because Kay is way down on the sort of totem pole in terms of hierarchy of importance at the LAPD, he got a crappy spinner. So he wanted us to sell this idea of it not working very well. So one of the things we did was we took a subwoofer, a big bass speaker, and we put it in my wife's Honda Element, an old sort of SUV kind of vehicle, and played low frequency sounds so that it vibrated the interior. And you would excite all the little parts that are loose inside the car, and you got these great rattles. So whenever you're inside the spinner, you hear the sound of my wife's Honda. Not very futuristic.
Well, basically, we had 52 actors coming through. So I was looking after Robin on set and Anna. I was around, but I wasn't physically on set every day. I was sort of prepping, cutting wigs, organizing what looks, testing the other actors as they're coming through, because we'd often, like Donald said, we'd get them sort of like 24 hours before they're going on camera, and we had to come up with a look, you know, and obviously it sort of saved the day with Denis not liking wigs, because we knew we couldn't really go there. So other than Mariette, one of our characters, she was on a TV series, we couldn't cut her hair, we couldn't change the color, we couldn't do anything, yet she was going to be filmed for about 6 weeks. So we decided to use, obviously, with a wig with her. Well, the limitations was also with the CGI, because I had to keep their hair sort of contained, and it wasn't about big hair, so we could morph the characters into one another, like Mariette and Joy into one another. So if it had been a sort of like a bigger look, it would have been too disturbing to the eye. So we kept the hair quite close to the head. Also, we were in a very humid atmosphere, so it wasn't about hair, big hair, or a lot of hair, because otherwise it would have died on set anyway. So basically the idea was to keep it quite close and quite stream-like, actually, in a sense. You know, even with Robin Wright, sort of just slicked back, almost like sort of slightly androgynous looking, and most of our girls without really a lot of big hairdo numbers. It was almost pulling it back and making it look a little bit more believable.
There was a lot of female parts, strong female characters, not like anything I've read before. There were more female characters in the movie than there's a male protagonist, and that I thought was really faithful to the first movie, that had the same kind of quality. There was hints of the melancholia of the first movie too that I thought was very important. They were there. There were the germs, the seeds for that, the seeds for that melancholia were in the screenplay, and that reassured me.
It's usually a question of time. There's never enough of it, it feels, for me, in recent years. Because we come on quite late, I know they rushed me to Budapest a few weeks early. Suddenly we weren't meant to be there till the end of June, which I think was an oversight on their part, to, Denis saying, I need you to be here, and, I'm on another film, and we're all over the place. I would say the challenge, to be honest, the challenge really was a lot of the actors were committed to other projects. And I know Kerry can attest to this. It was frustrating because we'd have Robin Wright, for instance, who's committed to a television series in America, hugely successful one. And we have her for 8 days or 10 days. So we know, costume, makeup, hair, we know we have her flying in for 12 hours, 1 day maybe. We get her, she leaves, she's coming back to film. Jared Leto may or may not be in the film. So I would say that everyone tried very hard to keep it as concise and organized as possible. But for me, it was quite difficult because I would have Jared Leto confirming he's in the film, Alcon saying, yes, we've got him, we're delighted, everyone's happy, it's Jared Leto. To next thing, a 15-hour day on the set in Budapest. I get back to the hotel and I'm having to wait to phone Los Angeles to speak with Jared and about his contact lenses, and that's another hour or two. And then all the semantics, all the organization that goes into that while I'm on set 15 hours a day. We can't cut his hair, we can't do this. There's a lot of restrictions placed on us, and we have to come up with things that will work within the realm of kind of possibility. And we came up with 2 possible looks for him. I would say it was a huge source of anxiety for me. I don't mind telling people that. And the contact lenses were a challenge, absolutely. Hand-painted based on a friend of his who had lost his sight, and they're hand-painted, and there are 2 people literally in the world. I mean, what a job. I hand-paint contact lenses. It's not something you just look up in the yellow pages. So there's 1 person available, and we had 10 days. So it was a lot of favors involved to get these. What other challenges? I would say coming up with things pretty quickly, or not having the opportunity to meet someone. Dave Bautista actually was a huge challenge because it was contingent, maybe 6 months before. Denis rang me up and he said, do you think you can make this guy look older? Now, I'd worked with Dave Bautista briefly on a Bond film, and he's one of the greatest, nicest people ever. And I knew Dave really wanted the film, and I wanted to help him as well. But they were concerned that they'd only seen him in Guardians of the Galaxy and Inspector, and could he look older, which I knew he could. So I called colleagues of mine in Atlanta where they were filming Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe 6 months before filming, and they did a makeup test to my specification, and it worked. And we put photos side by side. Alcon signed off on it. Dave subsequently was hired. And I'm very happy about that because it could have gone another route. And he's terrific in the film. And it's a very traditional aging with latex. And it was not a simple makeup, but it was really an old school technique that I knew would work. And Denis was very happy with it. And to have Dave on the film was such a bonus for everybody.
In order to be very spontaneous on set, you need to, for me, I need to be very prepared. And specifically with a movie of that scale, everything will be designed, everything will be created. So the crew doesn't go mad. You need to really be precise. So you need to storyboard everything. I deeply love storyboarding. Why? Because it allows me, in a very quiet environment, with good coffee and no pressure at all, to dream about the movie alone, to make the movie I wanted, the ideal movie, without bad weather, without producer on my back, without actors that don't want to say their lines. I can do the movie I want once on paper, and I deeply love that process. I'm alone with a storyboard artist and I draw every frame and I dream about it. I deeply love that moment. In my first movies, I thought that storyboards were castrative and that they were like something that will be in your way as your film, but it's total opposite. I deeply love them now. And it doesn't mean that I will shoot the storyboards on set. Sometimes Roger Deakins and we just throw them and say, okay, let's do something different because on the day there's a better idea on set. But most of the time, it's a very powerful tool also to communicate for the crew. So yes, I storyboard everything. When you storyboard also, it's a way to transform the movie into images. And I always, it's a way to rewrite the screenplay in the way I want it. So it's a very, very important moment in the film process.
Making the sequel to Blade Runner, it's everybody's favorite movie, and especially if you're a science fiction and visual effects fan like me. And so everyone for 2 years basically came up to me and went, don't screw it up. And even Ridley, when I saw him at the Visual Effects Society Awards, he's getting a big award. He mentioned my name. I asked him, I told him, he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the sequel. He goes, don't screw it up. I wrote that script with Michael Green. So it's like, we all got it that it needed to be special and respect the first movie, but we wanted to do a different movie because all great sequels are different. They respect the first movie, but they move on to do something else. And I'm saying that because visual effects is in the movie from the beginning to the end. The first shot is a visual effects shot, the last shot's a visual effects shot. Every wide shot in the movie is a visual effects shot. And there are big scenes and small scenes, and even the small scenes needed to be really, really perfect and spot on and echo the story and be right. But the hardest things for us were the cities, Joy, and bringing Rachel back from 1982. And so I'm going to talk about Joy, and that is personally my favorite scene. Joy is a digital companion, and so she's an apparition. You can put your hands right through her, right? And so to be able to make love to Kay, she hires a prostitute, Mariette, who is Mackenzie Davis, and so they come together, and the women merge together, and then they make love to Ryan Gosling as Kay. And so how we did that is we shot the two women separately with Ryan. So Roger Deakins' camera would be moving and shooting Mackenzie and Ryan. Then we'd reset, and I'd go and ask Denis, what take of Mackenzie do you like? And he would pick a take. And then I'd say, I need 5 minutes. And I would sit with Jessica Clother, our script soup, and we, with a stopwatch, would go through, okay, at 3 seconds, she raises her hand. At 4 seconds, she touches his head. At 6 seconds, she begins to walk around him. And then I would go and take an iPad, put it up in front of Ryan's face, and look at it, and line Anna's eyes up until they're exactly in the same place, right over where Mackenzie's eyes were. And we rolled, and then we would give her cues like, get ready to raise your hand. Oh, you're raising your hand now. Now going out, okay, get ready to walk behind. No, you're walking behind now. Now get ready to touch his. And, you know, Anna is a beautiful actress, really wonderful, and so she was giving her performance and trying to stay as close as possible. But there were moments, of course, she's a human being and she's not a machine. And so there would be places that she'd be in and out. But in the corners of the room, there were 4 small GoPro cameras, and they were recording the action from every angle, okay? And we took that, and we scanned digital copies of Mariette and Joy, so we had them completely digital copies that we made. And then from those 4 cameras, in Roger's camera, we positioned the digital geometry, the digital character, to be in exactly the same place as the women. And so then we took Roger's camera, then we mapped Roger's camera onto that digital geometry. Now once it was mapped, then where they weren't lined up, we could move them a little bit to make them line up. But it was very important that Denis said, well, John, I just don't want them to go like, zing, and they're lined up and then it's perfect. Because the whole point of this movie and the effects in this movie is them to feel analog and breathe and not be perfect and not be shiny, be dirty and sort of, you know, more real, more like, you know, just more human, more analog. And so what we did is we would get them into place, and then I would work with Paul Lambert, who is my supervisor at Double Negative, and we would go, okay, for this shot, they're going to start out of sync, and at the end of the shot, they'll be in sync. And the next shot, they're going to start out of sync, and then at the end of the shot, they're in sync. And finally, because what I wanted was the scene to climax, no pun intended, to get to a point and not just plateau out, right? It just keep going, going, going. And so we get to this place where he puts his arms around her and he pulls her to him, and you see his arms actually go through Joy, but get Mariette, and they pull, and then they come, and there's these 3 shots in a row where you get both women's performance, and then their eyes line up, and then you get this 3rd woman throwing a look at him. And when I saw that, I absolutely jumped out of my chair and went, yes, 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 that is it, right? And so we drilled down into that and sort of made that the high point of the scene. And to this day, when I see it, I always get this feeling like, wow, that's magic. We got it.